Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Jared Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carroll Connection. I'm your host, Jared Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out last week's episode 162 with Daniel Mendes. He is a financial communications consultant, I think, a professional. He gave me a different word than I was thinking at the time, but that was a really great conversation. He talked about kind of like his family dynamic at the time, going through high school, using track as like a way to kind of separate himself from his home life at the time and what he was going through, becoming valedictorian, going to Brown University, going to Miami for work, what that experience was like, and then ultimately moving to New York and experiencing New York during COVID and everything like that. It was a very unique experience, and his kind of like dive into content that he's starting to do now. So it's a really great conversation. You could check that out at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you like to watch your podcast, you can go on YouTube, search The Carroll Connection, or at Jared M. Carroll, and it should pop up right for you. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at The Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. So that brings me to today's episode 163, bringing back a guest from episode 11, Andrew Breiter-Wu.
It's been some time.
What's up, my man?
Oh, man, it's 4 years.
Yeah, it was February 4th, 2020 when I dropped that episode for us. We probably recorded it in January at the time.
Before the world shut down.
Yeah, right before. And you had graciously booked a conference room in Providence for us. It really was like a big moment for me in the sense I was telling you off podcast that the kind of like the standard that people were expecting that time were for podcasts for people to fall off were 10 episodes.
Right.
And your episode was 11. We had the conference room. It just felt real.
We broke the stigma. And what podcast are we on?
This is 163.
163 podcasts later. I mean, I think it's gonna last.
Yeah, it's definitely, we've kind of eclipsed that, and I hit 4 years recently, and we're powering through. I'm trying a new camera today, so we'll see how this angle looks. I don't know if I'll post it, but you guys might not ever see this footage, but I'm going to try with my new editing software. So got new cameras in the building. Andrew's got his camera. We're cooking today. So
it's Jared Carroll, not my camera, but it's facing me.
It's the guest camera, so you guys know. So for the return guest, obviously a lot's happened since episode 11 back in 2020. Yeah. So kind of catch people up on what's kind of been going on in your reality since then. And we'll probably start with the COVID stuff because that was most recent after that episode.
Yeah, it was just like it was weird. Initially, I was like, all right, I have no idea what this thing is, this virus is. And I got pretty sick in December. Like that December, beginning of the year, I got pretty sick, and I don't know if that was it, but I was out for like a week and a half or 2 weeks. But it was just kind of like a weird time where it's like everyone's like getting sick. We didn't know what we were doing. When it came to managing a team, it was like how we all got basically kicked out of our office. We had an office in the Prudential Tower in Boston, in Back Bay area, and the office itself, it was a shared workspace. We had two closed-in offices within that shared workspace, and it basically said like we're closing indefinitely, and we don't know when the building itself will open up again. So you're basically kicked out of being able to ever go up the elevators to go to the office. So it was very weird. We couldn't go back into it, so it was like a ghost town when we finally reopened the doors to get back in there, and ended up like that office we closed down because we were operating well remotely. We like the team overall, we had daily communication, Zoom meetings. Everyone was just basically handling it all remotely during the pandemic. And then I couldn't get people to get back to the office, get back to work, and get back. I mean, they were working, but get back to being used to that office setting. There's a ton of like controversy around getting back into the office and should there be this work-life balance, blah blah blah. But ultimately, if you're paying for a team to do XYZ deliverables, you should be able to request them to come to the office, do their job, go um to a work site or whatever it may be. But did have that challenge with our administrative staff, of getting back in, and ended up we just never renewed leases, never got another office to go physically back into, and everyone's been remote. There are their own challenges with managing remote employees, but overall, it works out in general. But I do want, if we do end up building out another office for people to come report to and whatnot, that I see people. I don't want an empty office to get a lease and have an empty office too. So, but yeah, that was one piece of it. We had our
Also, before you go
yeah,
into that tangent, plug
yeah.
in kind of what you do for the people that might be
Oh
this is the
yeah, yeah,
first
yeah.
time that
Uh,
might be hearing you.
so I own Breiter Planet, Breiter Planet Properties, which owns a few solar companies within it. A construction company, Breiter Planet Construction, and distribution and development, and a few other kind of businesses, all within the solar industry, so that we can basically be vertically integrated in the sense that we have exposure to different aspects of the industry to be able to kind of be as profitable and longevity focused as possible of a company. But our core operations really are solar development and construction. Very similar to real estate development, where you're putting money at risk. You're putting money into a project to develop basically open land. Say, take a given farmland that's bare, unused. We'll come in, we'll either buy that land, we'll lease the land, whatever the owner wants to do, and then essentially develop an entire solar project on that site. We'll front the money for permitting, for engineering, development, land clearing, whatever we have to do to get it ready to be built. And then from there, we bring in our construction business. We'll do all the excavation, pile driving, steel work, all of that to build out a solar project. We bring in our electricians. You've got just all of the moving parts to make a project happen. We have within the company to deliver it and basically build projects so that we can sell electricity to the utility, to other large corporations and businesses that need to buy power and would like to buy cheaper power
Yeah, and I
overall.
think it's cool that you've been able to incorporate those parts. So you're not having to go outside the business too often. You have a lot of that stuff. Sounds like internally within your company.
Yeah,
So
I mean, we've on the labor front, we had a lot of labor challenges. I mean, we still do, but it's gotten much better. During the pandemic, we had this spike of sales where we had people were focusing on their homes. So our residential solar business was just like people were like, we are home all the time. We're working from home. We've got all of our appliances going 24/7, and they're like, our electric bill, maybe it's $500 a month, maybe it's 1,000 plus. I've seen some even larger electric bills per month, and during the pandemic, everyone's like, "All right, I want to go solar. I want to save money on these electric bills. I want to focus on home improvements, re-roof my house." I mean, they were bringing us in for all these projects around the house, but the solar project was a big focus because everyone's focusing on their home now that it becomes their office, it becomes their play space, it becomes their living space, all of that. So we should have probably turned away a chunk of business like during that peak spike of sales. Probably should have turned some away, or told sales reps stop selling or slow down your sales. But it was a crazy time, and then you have the operations side. You have to build out management, build out site superintendents and operations managers and crews, and build all of that out. But the labor market we had challenges with, where you don't we were kind of not putting a standard on who we were hiring, avoiding drama of people saying, "Oh, XYZ from my last company was all this drama," and drama can kill an entire construction company. So um, we unfortunately had drama come in from different people, and had to manage that on the kind of employee management side of things. Most of our employees were kind of in the 35, 40-year-old space for a lot of our crews, but on the roof, you need young guys willing to kind of sacrifice their shoulders and muscles for a few years and kind of really put in the hard work to get solar mounted on roofs. It's hard on the body, but it's worth it. And the people that we do have with us now, and some of the subs that we work with currently, are like we're all a big family. We're all like we truly are working towards a mission. We're truly on the same page, which is great. But early on, we had some challenges with labor, and that's part of the market that we were in during the pandemic.
Yeah, it sounds like it was definitely a difficult time to kind of deal with that because you're getting an increase in the sales. People are demanding some of this stuff, but
Mm,
you're also challenges now that we're remote. Things are kind of just different too. On top of
yeah.
that, with trying to hire people, was there ever an instance where you were running into issues with works, like your employees almost working from home while also you want to, I don't know what the standard was with allowing you to continue working on solar projects. I don't
We
know if
were
you were
essential. We were
you were
essential
essential,
employees.
so you
Yeah,
were allowed to.
yeah,
That was kind of my question.
yeah.
I forgot the word for a second. Thank God
Essential
I forgot
employees.
that word though.
Yeah, we were building. So you have remote like operations or like the administrative support team was remote, but we have to build projects. I mean, there's nothing can stop. Like we're providing electric infrastructure throughout the country. Like we can't stop. So I spent a lot of time in Texas and between Texas and the Northeast throughout those early kind of. It felt like the pandemic was like a 3 year, like 2020 to 2020, end of 2021 to two ish, or but it was kind of the restrictions were frustrating, but overall we tried to be as safe as possible, keep everyone as comfortable as possible. Everyone had their own kind of tolerance of what they were willing to expose themselves to, and we respected that. But our guys needed to get the job done, get work done. It's part of it's like winter construction. It sucks, but you have to get out there and freeze your butt off and get the job done.
Yeah, and you brought up the conversation of working remote and stuff, and the challenge of that. I'm
Yeah,
definitely one of those people that likes working remote
yeah.
in my day to day job. So like, I was definitely one of those reluctant people, but I come from a position where the stuff that I was doing wasn't really requiring
Mm,
that collaboration that they would put it in person.
right.
A lot of it was external outside
Yeah.
of my organization. So that's where a lot of at least my pushback was. Like, I could understand why if you're really working with your colleagues on stuff and you like the face to face makes it
Like if
quicker
it's
and stuff.
teamwork, if you're doing some teamwork, like we're working on this all together, but
Yeah.
at the same time, if you're doing like that like focus time where it's like you put on the headphones and you just need to focus and do work. Like you don't need to have all your colleagues, hey man, let's talk. How was your weekend? Blah blah blah. You don't need to go through all that. Just you need to focus. I find there are people that can focus at home, and there was just like flex period of time
I think
where
hybrid's
there's some hybrid. Yeah,
been really probably the most successful thing
yeah,
that I think a lot of companies have had to just do just
yeah.
because it's just the way that times have gone. But I also think going into that work life balance stuff, we're kind of jumping the gun a little bit with this conversation, but
Mm,
because I wanted to talk about it a little bit
yeah,
later, but it's here now,
yeah.
so I might
Let's
as well
talk
talk
about.
about it.
Yeah.
But I think that people are valuing that work life balance a lot more compared to maybe prior generations. It just
Mm,
times have changed where you look at like even if you look at the traditional like household, the father being the breadwinner, not really around as much, not really the emotional support
yeah.
figure, the mother kind of taking and nurturing the children type thing.
Mhm.
Um, at least I've seen personally a lot more fathers being willing to kind of be around. They want to go to their kids' baseball games. They want to
I've
coach
seen
and
a
stuff.
lot of like because you look at some of the powerful women in the workplace that are beasts out there that are like, hey, they're bringing in high six figures in their household, and they're like they find someone that's the complete opposite of them in many cases. I find that's more successful relationships are where you have one alpha and one that's not as alpha,
Well,
and
I think you need
uh,
that to have a
but if you
successful
have two
household to.
alphas, it can be. I don't see a lot of those marriages lasting
I would
long
agree with
term.
that. Yeah, because
But
I mean, it also, especially if you introduce kids into that mix,
yeah,
you're relying on other people to help raise the children, and obviously it takes a village to raise children,
yeah, but
but the
you
parents play
want
a big
a
role.
parent to be
Yeah,
around for
exactly.
that. But so I do see that there's a lot of a lot of powerful women out there in the workplace that are the breadwinner, and then you have those stay-at-home dads or kind of more involved. It's everyone has to know themselves ultimately. But I do. We don't have like 9 to 5s within our company. It's not. I don't put a we don't do hours. It's like this is the expectation. If it takes 30 hours and you're done early, whatever, the job's done. But if it takes 60, 70, we double down, and this is the expectation I have. And it's just I don't do I'm not a 9 to 5 kind of guy. I'm a guy that says I set clear expectations of what deliverables I'm looking for out of my team, and then from there we do the job. If you're not hitting those deliverables, we have a chat. But that's how we structure it, where it's for whether it's a salaried or, and everyone has some sort of performance bonus. So if we do XYZ, if we deliver above an expectation, or if we install X per watt, like a price per watt, or we find different metrics where the output that they do is directly correlated with how well they do compensation wise, where everyone's trying to do more, everyone's trying to install more projects, get more projects moving forward, move fast, speed, because I mean we have a big sense of urgency. A project comes in, we need to move. We see that, we've seen in the past, if a project takes longer, there's cancellations, it costs more. So the more you can speed up things and everyone have the whole team aligned that we need to move fast and get this job taken care of and move, um, it's better for the overall company and for our customers.
Yeah, how would you say that your leadership has changed
Hmm.
since even like our last conversation
Yeah,
and stuff? Like I could imagine with obviously everything that has happened, but obviously just growing older
yeah,
that you've been able to see more things, do more things,
yeah,
that you've had to be required to grow
yeah,
as a leader, especially leading a company of a lot of people and having that that skill to have a lot of those difficult
yeah,
conversations as well too, especially relating to probably like the work drama or like the work from home stuff. I could imagine
yeah.
there's conversations that you've had to have that you probably weren't expecting before
Yeah.
the pandemic. So how is like your leadership skills really grown over the last several years?
Yeah, there's a concept in leadership called the law of the lid, basically law of the lid, um, and it's basically you're limited to how much you can grow others and lead others with your own leadership skills and capabilities. So until you grow internally, until you grow and become a bigger, better leader yourself, you're limiting yourself with your own capabilities to what you can provide to others. So that law of the lid is critical, where you have to double down on yourself. And I'm a student of leadership. I will never stop being one. I'm always trying to study it, get better, and I found that early on, I wasn't focused on becoming a better leader. I wasn't always looking internally and saying I need to improve and improve and improve. But now I am. I've had to kind of structure, just be as more authentic as possible as a leader as well, where I don't want to read something and say, all right, XYZ personality says I need to do XYZ. I do that, but then it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel like who I am. So now, I mean, we're a family. Like our company, my mom works for me. She's my right hand admin. We've got the other people that work within our company. We're all a family. We're all focused on a cause. We're not all basically related, but we're all focused on a mission to achieve. And I find that being authentic to who you are, and when something bad happens in business, when someone screws up, it's okay to chew them out. It's okay to have that conversation. Ideally, conversation. But if they keep doing it, you have to have a more heated conversation. But it's part of the growth. It's part of standing up for your business. Part of standing up for um, your customers and the path forward. So I think I've certainly grown. I've been in this industry for over a decade, the solar industry, I've grown leaps and bounds from early days, but it was my first job. It really was what crafted me to be who I am today.
Yeah, how would you say, cuz like I've always had issues with the concept of like we're a family thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just me being more creative and I like my own personal space. I
Mhm.
like being an introvert. I don't obviously you spend most of your life at your job a lot of the time too, and you
Yeah.
spend more time with them than your family. So how do you get someone to really buy in to that whole family concept when they're not the owner, they're not as invested as you are? But
Mhm.
like how do you cultivate a culture that really supports that notion?
Yeah, but it starts with the comp structure. So you want to make sure they are getting a part of the upside. However you structure, there's all types of like you make a profit, you share some of the profits. That's one way. You can just have a piecemeal where it's like I have to perform like let's say it's a dollar amount. If the company has to make $100,000 in a week or whatever the number is, and to just break even. But if it makes 120, I'll share some of that 20 with you, with the team. Figure out a structure that makes sense where you can properly financially manage the business. I mean, that's critical. You need to be able to make a profit. You need to be able to um, grow the business, cover expenses, assets in the future, all of that. But um, making sure that your team is getting a piece of the pie is a first step. Also, when you talk to them, you just it's natural for me. I don't know how to just tell you to create a culture. It's just be yourself. Some people might not like you. I mean, there might be those that they don't like their leader, so they probably should take the job with that person. So that's one piece of it. I don't know how I've created the culture. I don't. I know I've overall been authentic to who I am, and I think that's pretty critical. And I care about my people. I truly, truly, truly care about my people, and um, I think that goes a long way. Where caring is one thing, but actions that you take when they have tough times in their life. I know their children's names. I know their cats' names and dogs' names. I am a part of their family, and I I'm the source of their livelihood. I'm what's allowing them to have a roof over their head, to be able to take care of their family and their children. So there is that correlation where their family's livelihood is connected to their work and what they're doing. But I typically do filter out people that are just, I mean, that aren't fully looking to buy into a mission and a vision, and align our company's direction with their own personal direction. Because you do have to take, like, part of my first few questions in an interview is, where are you going in life? What's your plan? Where do you want to achieve? Where do you want to go in life? And if they have no sense of direction, I probably don't want to really. I mean, I want to coach them and help them get figure out where they want to go, but I want hungry people that have a clear direction or goal. Like, hey, I want to buy a house. I want to go. Actually, my plan's to be here for 2 years, put in some hard work, and then I want to travel the world. Whatever it is, I try to get that out and understand what it is, and then say, all right, this is where the company's going. The company's doing X, Y, Z in the next 6 months, a year, 5, 10 years. You're not planning on being in there 5, 10 years, but in these next 2 years that you are planning, this is exactly what we need. Can we align how you're compensated, what you want to do with where we're going for that period of time? And then you find that mesh, and they're like, let's do it, let's rock and roll. So
I think that makes a lot of sense what you're
that's
saying.
probably the closest I can do in explaining how we align ourselves, but it works.
Yeah, I think the compensation piece is so critical
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, we're in a capitalist society. We care about money.
Uh,
We need money to buy things. We need money to do a lot of things that we have in
mhm.
the current structure of society. That that needs to be a huge incentive, and having it directly related to kind of like the company's success
Mhm.
forces them to really buy in. And I think that's kind of a cool way to look at that too, is where they're getting a piece of that pie that you mentioned.
Uh,
And I think that that will allow people to buy in and as well as creating the culture, I would say, I mean, I know you personally. I think you being your authentic self is gonna help people buy in because, I mean, we've all had jobs where we're with managers or senior management that we just don't connect with because they just portray the boss. They just portray the manager. They fill the role. They're good at what they do, but they don't step down to that level to
Kind of
connect
like
with
a
you in a
body.
person.
They're like a
Yeah.
body in a management title.
Yeah, it's just a character
Yeah.
almost, and you almost have to play the role and be a good little employee and don't step on the shoes. You don't want to get in trouble with management because they're the bad
It's
boss.
not a long-term role. I mean, if
You don't
you're
want to work for someone like that at the
I
end of the
mean,
day.
I would probably. I mean, that's where your employees fire you. In that case, where I'm sure. I mean, you could say, "Oh, I don't have a boss. My boss is this guy above me," but your employees could actually fire you by quitting and leaving and saying, "I don't respect you as a leader," and move on. And that's your right as a leader or as an employee.
Yeah, that's where the your voice matters.
Yeah.
Is you also got to like when you're in these positions too, not in the leadership positions. Maybe you aspire to that one day, but those positions where you're working for someone, your power is your presence.
Yeah.
Like you know what you're capable of as an employee, and if you don't feel like you're being allowed to succeed in the ways that you need to succeed or grow in the ways you need to grow, as uncomfortable as leaving the job may be, you need to explore those options to
Yeah.
continue growing your career. And obviously, people are going to have different goals. Like you said, people might want to travel, they might want a family, they might want a house. Like you got to really define those goals for yourself in your career to figure out where things are going. And that's why I think like yearly checks or like I do like birthday reflection episodes and like
Mhm.
just talk about me my personal like growth or like my emotions and what I've gone through and it's a chance to reconnect with myself. And I
Yeah.
don't think enough people, especially in like the workforce, take the time to reconnect with themselves because they're just like, oh, it's just my job, it's what I do. But like you got to like go back in within yourself, like you were mentioning earlier in the leadership skills.
Yeah.
It's the internal growth. It's are you able to go inside of yourself to look at the character traits that might not be as flattering or as great as you want them to be and take the step to work on
And you
those.
can't grow. You can't grow other people, other leaders, because leadership's about growing other leaders to then grow other leaders and keep going, going, going. So if you can't don't grow yourself, how are you gonna grow other leaders when you're gonna compliment your own leadership, which probably isn't the full capability because there is no lid in leadership. But there's no, I mean, it's kind of an open scale, but there's a lid on your own leadership capabilities. So it's critical just to grow more leaders.
Yeah, and it goes into the concept of mentor mentee
Hmm.
relationships. Have you had any chances to mentor any employees, or have you been really big in the kind of just like obviously you're kind of in the
Yeah,
terms of your career, you're very young into your career, so
yeah.
you're really growing it. But have you really had a chance to kind of mentor people at all?
I wouldn't say it's like we formally say, "Hey, I signed to be your mentor,"
Yeah, yeah,
and we did nothing like formal. But I mean, I think there's different. I have conversations. I talk to people, and there's people. I mean, I tend to people tend to open up with their life with me, and I love to listen, love to help, and if I have their permission to give some advice, I will. So there are some plenty of people, younger or older. I talk to people of all ages. I love talking to really old people. I think they're awesome to learn from and hear the history that they've lived through and regrets that they have at their last few years. And I mean, I never want to regret stuff. I want to do everything I can to avoid regrets. Yeah, I find that I have supported and advised. I would say more advised, not mentor, but I have advised many people on kind of where they're at in life, business. They're some are going from a W-2 role trying to convert to 1099 self-employed. I'd say a lot of people I talk to is kind of in that journey of switching over. But yeah, I do help people whenever I can.
yeah. And I like the point, and we could dive into this a little bit of
Yeah.
like the regret
Hmm.
of not having regret. I always reference my second episode with my late grandfather
Hmm.
who passed in 2020, and his whole quote was like to take a chance, and I even
Yeah.
got that
Yeah.
tattooed on me. And
And that had a big impact on you.
yeah,
So,
because that conversation was when he was recently diagnosed with brain cancer. He knew he was terminal. He knew he was going to pass away.
yeah.
So I really got him to be introspective at that point to really share the intimate details
And
of
he
what
just
he was
opened
thinking.
up. He really
And
opened up.
yeah, he really talked about if you're not doing something you enjoy, you want to try something new, to take a chance, because he had moments in his life that he didn't, and would regret those. Like
Yeah.
he like didn't hate the way his life turned out, but those moments where he thought he maybe should have tried something,
Yeah.
and he regrets that. So I think that piece of regret is super important to hit on, because when I look at you and look at the stuff you've accomplished, especially since us back in high school, you took those chances. You chased the dream to
Yeah.
create something that you were passionate about. And I mean, that was the whole initial conversation that we had in that episode 11,
Yeah.
was why I reached out. Was you're one of those people that really stepped outside the box. Was like, I see the cookie cutter life
Yeah.
and I want my own thing, but I want to do it in a like industry that I believe in.
Yeah.
And you were always about that stuff, especially even I remember even in high school you were kind of about that stuff too
No,
as well.
in high school, I was knocking doors for solar.
Yeah.
I was working full time in solar for, I think it was June, end of sophomore, junior, and senior year, definitely full time. So, I mean, class would end, I'd do whatever extracurriculars, and then I would hit the doors, and I'd be knocking doors for hours. And I mean, of course, we also had football. We played football together.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so there were those in football season where we had like a homework period in football, but anytime I wasn't doing extracurriculars, I was knocking doors. And when the football season ended, it was just like school ends, get out on the doors, and I was knocking door to door to sell solar. And was able to pay for college doing that, and was able to kind of get my early. I mean, after I was door to door for a period of time, joined Tesla, worked for them for a few years, and was doing appointment sales for solar projects in the Home Depot selling solar. I mean, it was it's been a great journey overall.
Yeah, you've been able to experience a lot.
Yeah.
Going from like really the door to doors or all the way up to like owning the damn thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's like such a cool story to hear, as
Thank
someone that is I grew up with, put in the work to really chase what they're passionate about, and continuing to like push the envelope with that, and continuing to grow, and not being satisfied with where they are too.
Yeah.
Like you climb the mountain in terms of owning it, but you're like, I can reach more, I can be a better leader, I can keep growing. And like the whole make more leaders thing
Mhm.
is so cool, because like that's so true. And it goes into like, even if you think about like sports athletes and stuff like
Yeah.
that, where it goes into that mentor stuff, they might not say, hey, I'm your mentor, bro.
Yeah.
They're taking those guys under their wing. The veterans are taking them under the wing, teaching them the ways. And later in their careers, if they ever have those reflective pieces in interviews, they sometimes will reference those points
Mhm.
where that person had a huge impact in their life. So being able to see that for yourself, to see those things that you could do for other people, inherently makes you a good leader, because you have that vision for not only yourself but for your company and for your employees, to care about them in that sense. And I
Absolutely.
think that's like super valuable. I did want to ask,
Yeah.
in terms of like the real spike in people doing solar these days,
Hey,
how does that
your house has solar.
yeah,
I
yeah,
came
yeah.
in here. I was like, "This is great. There is solar on this house."
Oh yeah, we did that a while ago. My dad
Mhm.
bought into that stuff immediately. Like, I
Okay.
mean, it saves a ton of money. Like
Yeah.
once you're into it, it saves the money. Like
Yeah.
it's just it's stupid not to do it.
Mhm.
Like especially nowadays.
Again, it's stupid not to do it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, don't take my financial advice. If you can't afford it, don't
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's probably financing options and stuff
Mhm.
like that. I'm not
You can
encouraging
dig
people,
into it, but yeah.
but I'm just saying it's it's there for people. But in terms of the in spike and a
Yeah.
lot of people getting into solar, what's your opinion on this? Because I
Are you
can
saying homeowners or people
people selling
solar?
it now. Because
Yeah.
I've seen way more people that I know
Yeah.
getting involved into solar, and obviously
The
sometimes
solar bros, I call
yeah,
them.
it gets really into the pyramid type schemes that
Oh,
you see and stuff.
I
And I'm
would-
not saying it is or not, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying it gives that energy.
Yeah. So there was a Time article that came out, I think, a week ago, and it was basically calling out the solar bros. And there's in solar, there's kind of, let's talk residential solar. All right, there's construction. There's what we call EPCs, engineering, procurement, construction. So the company that's actually doing all the paperwork, the engineering, development, permits, building it, and then ultimately getting it operational. That's the corporate. That's what I own. I own an EPC business. Then there's sales organizations that they're basically 1099 sales reps. They sell. We tell them this is our price per watt and that we install at. This is adder prices. This is what main panel upgrade costs. This is what all re-roofs, all of that. And the sales reps then sell above X dollars per watt, above our pricing, and then they get that commission. And there have been some charge an exorbitant amount to homeowners. But ultimately, it's their job to decide how much they want to get paid. If they can close the sale with what they've picked as the ultimate pricing for the homeowner, then they get paid for that. But there's this kind of this like bro culture um that I came up in too. I mean, I wouldn't call myself one of them, and I've never been like one of the guys very often. It's just not who I am, and I know that. But overall, it's just like we like rent out a house and we go like do cold plunges and hot saunas and cold plunges, and we do this basketball cold plunges, and then it's like, all right, 5 hours later, it's time to start my day. Basically, and workout, all this other stuff, and they go out, and it's just like everyone's like kind of broing out, and they go out and knock doors and they sell solar door to door. I do find the reason that they do that is because you're trying to create culture. You're trying to create this teamwork, this ultimate like we're a team. We hunt together, we work out together, we do everything together, and we go out there and we crush it. Um, there are people that have issues with that. I never ran one of those organizations. I can tell you that. The way that we found that it made the most sense to sell projects is currently, I mean, we did have those sales reps working for us. We had those types of organizations, and it ended up being a nightmare that we regret in many cases, where they feel like they own the company, they feel like like they can take over, and I've had many try taking over my company, and it can become a nightmare to work with too. So we found that it's best. I run a lot of our sales, and it's just natural to me. But in-house employees that are the company, and that's where our industry is going, is the person you meet with is an employee of the company, that's the actual installer that's doing all the work, that can properly represent them, and is getting paid fair, but they're getting paid a base salary, they're getting paid fair commissions, but we're not charging clients an exorbitant amount just to be able to make a commission, to a major commission. So that's where the industry is going. I think sales orgs are going to be on the decline. It might be an unpopular opinion in my industry, but I do think that's going to be happening with more consolidated everything in one company going forward.
It really just sounds like a middleman. Like they're not selling the product; they're just going to companies and selling the product for them just to make profit because they're
Yeah.
pretty much like almost like a sales agency. It
No,
sounds
they
like.
are sales. They are
Yeah.
sales.
So that they're pretty much just a group of salesmen that will sell your product for you, so you don't have to. So you could hire a salesman to go sell your product,
Mhm.
but that's where
We
what
work
you're.
with them, and it's a necessary evil
Mhm.
because the industry does need someone driving new projects and new revenue into it. But where construction companies run into trouble is when they become dependent on solely another company for running like the revenue in their business. So you need a proper business is in control of the revenue. They control what triggers, what levers they have to change to in marketing or whatever to get more revenue, slow down the revenue when it's too much projects, and that's how you run a company. But when you put like a sales org, they're like, take it all, finish it, install it all. It's do whatever we tell you to do because we're selling, we're making you money, we want our commissions. Like, and it can become a volatile relationship.
I could easily see that too, because I mean, they're not a part of your organization. They are their own organization selling your product.
Yeah.
And then they need you to deliver so they can get their money.
Hmm.
And I could see where the tension can arise in that situation. And then like you're saying, where they think they're bigger than you because they're selling your product.
Hmm.
But it makes more sense, like you said, to have everything internal.
Yeah.
So like, would you say that if someone went, like obviously in the past, those companies, if someone was dealing with one of those sales reps, they're getting charged more than what if they just went directly to you.
True.
basically. Yeah, so that's what it sounds like is these people, and this is like the culture that we're in right now, where people want to they want to be salesmen. Being a salesman is
Yeah. To us directly versus going outside of us, because that customer experience is really critical for us. And I know that when we had some major sales volume coming in that was more than we could handle, our customer experience dropped. And then you have unhappy customers, you have all these other downfalls from that. And it's part of the learning curve of building a company. But I never want to have an unhappy customer. I absolutely hate that. And so I'll do whatever it takes to improve and always prevent bad customer experiences.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting just because like I brought that up because it's just
Mhm.
crazy how it came out.
Yeah,
It felt like left field where all of a sudden, like
yeah.
people that I even know
Hmm.
are getting involved in these projects, and it's just interesting to see where there was really no like with you it made sense. Like you would been working on solar like for
I
most of your life.
It
Like
was
you
a
were passionate about
sustainability
it.
guy. I
Yeah.
was recycling, doing all the recycling. I found that the solar industry was how I could turn a passion into a career. So that's where I was like, it triggered like, huh. And the financing was out there where homeowners can have a solar loan that's cheaper than their electric bill per month. And all of this was happening over the past 10 years. You had all the new financing, you had kind of the new better incentives came out. Right now we've got great federal incentives and state incentives. So all of that snowballed into this rise in the solar industry getting big. We're about to get into 2024, which is going to be a very tumultuous year in the solar industry across the country and world. And the companies that have been living this kind of fluffy cash, like the kind of monopoly money type life, where they're just like it's kind of this fake life. All of that's going to come to an end. I mean, we're already seeing these companies disappear off the map. So we have to be prepared for a very rough year and trim the fat, be lean and mean. Ultimately, if you're not lean and mean in business and personally financially, you're not going to be able to survive and thrive. And that's kind of my motto going into 2024.
So you anticipate things, and I've kind of seen with the anticipations of like the Fed rate and stuff like
Hmm.
that, where they're talking about the economy and
Yeah.
inflation, that 2024 is kind of the year where a lot of this is going to really
Yeah.
expose itself. And obviously, we're entering an election year where that's going to drive a lot more things to the surface, a lot
Yeah.
more politicized stuff. We're not going to dive into that
Mhm.
conversation, but it sounds like this upcoming year is going to be kind of a make or break year for a lot of other companies, and
Yeah.
that might be a chance for you to capitalize too at the same time, but also not overextend yourself like you're saying, and prepare for in Game of Thrones the winter
Oh yeah.
type vibe is coming.
You
Like
can be a
winter is
squirrel.
coming.
Yeah, be like a squirrel. Get your nuts, scale your nuts piled up. because I mean that's what you have to be. Like I mean, if you are overextended in debts in business, and you're kind of operating in our industry, we have different milestone payments that we get paid. Some are milestone one, where you develop the project and you get a milestone payment, and then you finish the project, finish the construction, and you get another milestone two payment, is what we call it. Um, some of that, like a lot of businesses are running off of all those milestone one payments, but we have to be prepared in 2024. It's going to probably all be construction complete, where a business has to front all the cash for materials, for labor, all of that, and then gets reimbursed going forward. And I do see a lot of that happening. Many of our partners require just only pay after you have to front all the cash for it, and then you get paid. So it's challenging overall, because you have to have this, like, you have to manage cash flow. You have to have this kind of fund that you put money into, and then hopefully get paid within a week or two. But sometimes it's like I've got some that's like been a year plus that we haven't been paid. Clients just decide not to pay us, so you just have to eat that, bring in lawyers, take care of that. And it's always it's just what I'm seeing a rise of right now is customer defaults, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've been
Whether
seeing that
it's
in the
loan
loan
payments,
payments issues.
or
Yeah.
they say they have the cash to do a cash purchase, and then they don't have the cash after we install it, and then you have to go after them. And it's unfortunate, but you just have to do what you have to do to protect the business.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult time where a lot of people are defaulting, or like I've seen a lot of bankruptcy issues and just issues with loans. High interest rates are going to eat you alive,
Yeah.
and people really, really don't understand that.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm coming from the accounting finance world, so
Yeah.
I kind of have a better understanding than probably the average.
Absolutely.
So that's why I always encourage people to to really look at the rates to
Mhm.
pay off stuff, like pay more than the minimum. Like
Yeah.
you
Pay into
should
the principal.
like exact you got I mean you got to lower the principal. I mean it's simple math here.
Mhm.
Like I mean maybe it's not simple, but because clearly not everyone knows, but like just do the quick math. You could
Yeah.
see how much this interest is going to accrue over time
Mhm.
if your principal balance is what it is. If you're just knocking off your principal balance,
Yeah.
your
And
your
but do a
interest.
loan before you even get the whatever you're getting. Do a loan calc, just a basic search loan calculator on Google, and see how much total interest are you going to be paying with that. Like it might shock you if you say, all right, let's do a 30-year mortgage, and what does a 8-10% interest rate look like? It's going to be ugly, and
Yeah.
you're going to be like, I don't know if I want to pay that much, because I thought I was just trying to afford the house at 400K, but then I have to pay that much to the bank. You're gonna have some question marks if you want to move forward with that.
That's where a lot of millennials and Gen Z are running into issues right now in terms of housing. Is
Yeah,
those we want to take those life steps. We want to buy the house. We want to have the family.
you
We
don't
want
have
to.
to.
Well, I think a lot of people do want to
Yeah,
take these steps in terms of like the traditional American dream, but
yeah,
in general, I think people do want to have their own house. They do want to have families and things of that nature. At least I would hope
mm,
most majority of people do want those things because those are good things.
yeah,
And with the current economy, it's just not really sustainable to do that.
mm,
And you really would be overextended. You're probably going to go under. You're going to be house broke. You don't
yeah.
really want to become house
There's
broke.
so many house broke people
Yeah.
out
And you
there.
don't want to go through that
Yeah,
path. And sometimes the issue is a lot of people sometimes don't have options to live with their parents or relatives to live with, and rent's always super expensive right now because housing is also super expensive, and those things are really going hand in hand at this point.
but
And
with rent or with housing, there's a cost of operating the house too. So there's all right. Some people are just comparing like 2,000 a month for rent versus 2,000 a month for a mortgage, but it's 2,000 a month with a mortgage plus XYZ breaks. I have a leaky roof. I got this that happens. I got you still have your electric and utilities for both, but there's more on top of it. There's homeowner insurance. There's taxes. There's all of the like things that happen, and like you can only like not maintain a house for so long until it's like a shithole, and it like you really need to like put some major construction into it.
I'm glad that you brought up that point too,
Yeah,
because the glorification of owning property versus renting has gotten out of hand.
yeah,
Because obviously owning a house is good. You want to have that asset and stuff like that. But what you're saying, all these additional costs that you wouldn't pay for in rent,
Yeah.
like I'm not saying you should rent your entire life. If you want to, do it. But I'm just saying that we're at least in social media and comment sections and videos are shaming renters because they're not owning the property. But there's pros and cons to everything.
Right now is a renting market.
Yes,
When interest
100%.
rates are high or spiking high, it's a renter's market. But of course, you could always buy a house and then do a 15-year mortgage at the current interest rates, and you could refinance when rates go down. That's always available to someone as well. But it's a renter's market right now.
And the issue with refinance is you waiting to that point
Yeah.
to refinance because
You
you don't
don't
know.
know.
Wow, you don't know, and
Yeah.
like that's where I will push back on real estate agents, and they'll be like, "Well, you can refinance. You could refinance." Well, we really don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it
You
really
could
depends.
refinance.
Yeah,
They are correct.
yeah,
But
but you don't
it
know.
could be 5. Like Jerome Powell might say, "Hey, his last indication was that we're premature talking about any rate decreases." Everyone's like, "Oh, we're talking about rate decreases." No, I saw a thing on his last comments, and that's premature. Like it's not going down anytime soon. So we need to be prepared for the current rates that we're at least 2024, I would say. I don't know if there's going to be a cool down. The pandemic created this crazy economic cycle and environment that's like weird. We're not in a recession, but things are tight for some people.
They say we're not in a recession, but
I wouldn't call it a recession.
it's pretty damn close.
It's
They keep
weird.
moving the goalposts for stuff too. Like
Yeah.
ever since COVID, we've gotten to the point where they like to redefine things to like change it to not scare people
Yeah.
or to include things that are not supposed to be there. But if we took
Yeah.
traditional definitions for these things, we're pretty much have been in a recession.
It's weird. But I think I call it just weird times.
Yeah, I mean, you could call whatever you
Yeah.
want, but people are struggling, and that's like the point of it.
But
It's
then
like,
people are also thriving too.
yeah, I mean,
In
it depends on the
pandemic,
industry.
People were struggling in the pandemic, but also like people were having sky high sales. Different markets have different things. So I think whenever there's people struggling, there's also people thriving, and vice versa all the time. That always happens. There's never gonna be a time that we're all doing well. Like we can't. That's not the world we live in.
It's not. It's not a utopia.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not going to happen.
It's a
And
capitalistic society.
yeah, and I don't think that we should. I don't think that it's a.
We don't want that.
Yeah, you can't go for that because one, that's just not real life. It's just not. And I'm very big on like the yin and yang of life. I think the ultimate goal is having good balance, and you got to experience the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Like, because if you don't experience one or the other, you're gonna struggle when you go through these different things.
Yeah.
Because if you live in only good, and then you get that one bad thing, it's going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
And if you have all bad stuff, you might not even believe in that one good thing. You're like, well, everything's still bad because all I know is bad.
The character development too. Like I think probably I'm 28 right now, so probably in a few years, first step, find a woman. That would be the first step. But
Or whatever you're into. We got to
No,
clarify these
I'm
days.
talking about myself,
I'm kidding. I'm
right?
kidding.
And then at some point have children. Probably in my mid-30s, I bet would probably be where it will end up being. And when you get to that point, I'm afraid of like soft children. I don't want soft kids. I want them to be like ultimately having some adversity, having some tough times, but I don't want it to be completely tough, but I don't want to be at a point like say my business gets to a stage where they never have to worry like my future children never have to worry about money or anything ever. I actually don't want them to think that that's their money. It's not. I mean, it's not. I want them to have some adversity, have some pain, cry a bit on stuff. Like that's how you develop as a person. You don't want to create this like fly your kids first class all the time and give them this like soft environment. And you want them to have adversity so that they can develop and become the men and women that you want them to become in the future. But I just that's an interesting thing for me to think about as I grow and develop financially and as a business. Thinking about how when you potentially raising kids in the future, what that looks like and making sure that I'm not raising soft kids, basically.
It's crazy how that starts to creep in as we get into
Yeah,
our later 20s. Life just gets more real. Like,
yeah.
it's just like you remove college is several years past that
Hmm.
point, and you're really into like your career, and life is just moving forward, and you're going to start losing family members as you
Hmm.
age, and the thought of having children and creating that legacy. I'm really big on legacy. I
Yeah.
love the Game of Thrones mentality almost of like the family name and
You're
producing the
clearly a pretty big Game of
yeah,
Thrones fan.
concerning the leg sleeve. I'm very into that mindset
Yeah.
though. And I think it's an important thing. If you know your family history, I had a conversation with Matt Gallup on this podcast before, and he talked about his family history, and like he talked about the value of knowing your family history, and
Yeah.
that can create a huge incentive for a lot of people if you know where you come from. You don't got to know all the way back, but
Yeah.
like if you even just know a little bit about where you're coming from and stuff like that, or you're the person that creates that legacy going forward,
Hmm.
like especially if someone like yourself, you're the
Yeah.
one that created this business that you could pass on to your kids, or you could show them the
Right.
steps or whatever.
I'm not passing
Not in that
anything
sense, you
on,
know what
but
I
yeah.
mean, but like it's that this is possible type
Yeah.
mindset. Like I did this
Hmm.
because I worked hard.
Yeah.
You could do whatever you do, and it's the same thing that I don't know if you ever heard Shaquille O'Neal talk about that.
Yeah.
He says to his kids like, "This is my money. This is not
Oh,
your
I
money."
love it. I love
Yeah,
it. I
and
love
I
it.
would agree with that because it goes into that entitled mindset you don't want to create for your children, because it goes into the baby stuff that you're saying, and we live in a society that
Yeah.
we want to do that. And I get it, you want to protect your kids,
Hmm.
but you can't protect them from everything because that prevents growth.
Yeah.
They need to experience everything. I say one of the best things about the human experience is we get to experience all of them, all of
Yeah.
the emotions, and to have a life worth lived,
Hmm.
you need to feel them all. You
Yeah.
you should, and that was the whole basis of like my motto when I first started this podcast
Hmm.
was to feel your feelings.
Yeah.
Like you need to feel this shit,
Yeah.
and especially as like men, we're taught to push it down, but you should feel it. Like whether it's privately or in a therapeutic sense,
Yeah.
whatever it is, that stuff energy moves,
Yeah.
and if you keep that energy stored, you don't want it to pour out on the wrong person at the
But
wrong
you,
time.
you want to feel it, yes. But also, there are times in your life that, like, let's take a middle-aged guy, just has a young family, has a wife, and they're barely making ends meet. You need, as a man, you need to go out there and take another job, do some part-time jobs, do some Ubering on nights and stuff. You need to go feel some pain in order to go take care of your family and go do your job. So I think
That's the caveat to that.
but
It's
you
you got to
need
know it.
to sure there are certain times that you do have to push it down and then just go out there and do take care of the people you care about.
It's the
You know?
balance between, and this is what I've learned through this
Mhm.
podcast over doing it, is most of my life I was brought up on the man up stuff, like
Yeah.
just don't cry, suck it up, do it. And I think I'm glad I was raised on that,
Mhm.
but I'm glad I also found the therapy and how to express stuff,
Mhm.
because if you don't know how to cope with a lot of that stuff, it can be very detrimental not only to your relationships but to yourself.
Yeah.
And finding that middle ground, because it's the self-awareness aspect. You got to know when there's moments where you do have to just suck it up. Like you got to
Yeah.
work, you got to do this shit.
It's a
And then
great
there's
there is it's this that period of time when you do have to do that, but then it's at night before you go to bed, how do you process through it and be able to be refreshed going forward to the next
yeah,
day?
because if
Yeah.
you're not releasing it, it goes to that whole example of me saying you're storing it. And
Hmm.
storing it is just, again, you might pour it out on the wrong person, you might pour it out in your job, and you
Yeah.
might get fired or some stupid
Hmm.
shit. So you don't want to create that negative energy to your life. So having that space to do that, I think is super important. We are getting towards the end of the podcast.
Okay. Okay.
So is there anything specific that you wanted to bring up that you didn't get a chance before I go to like your last word?
Yeah. I think overall we talked about solar. We talked about my career. My biggest thing is that I just want to do a quick talk about the trades briefly. There is a big need for more tradespeople. I think there's a big stigma with there's the juniors and seniors going in high school right now that are going into that next step of their career. There's a big push on going to college, and there is a huge need. And if your plan is, I want to go, why are you going to college? Are you going to college to try making money? Do you want to make six figures? Um, there are plenty of trades right now that you can go into an oil field, a solar field. You can be an electrician or a plumber, make mid six figures, like make $250,000, and do that just because we there's such a high need for this labor out there. So I think it's really critical that we don't push so heavily on college, but we push more on self-awareness of what do you want to do in your career in life, and bring in the parents, bring in everyone to have this conversation of where they want to take their career in life. Because right now we're the next TikTok millionaires are going to really be the plumbers and electricians of today, the crypto guys, all of that. That's today. In 5-10 years, it's going to be the plumbers and electricians are the people that are like online. This is how I did it. I went to trade school and I got my tools and I went out and I hustled and I worked, and that's it, guys. So I think that's a big push. I just wanted to plug in there because we need electricians, we need people working for us, and there's a gap in available men and women electricians and plumbers and laborers that we need out there in this market right now.
Yeah, I think that's a very huge issue with currently, and college was really pushed on a lot of us, and a lot of us didn't really enjoy that experience too. So I think hopefully that course will correct itself. I
Yeah,
think even just financially, it's going to correct itself if we start having a lack of people in those positions. The demand's going to go up, the
yeah,
prices are going to go up, and people who are going to need money are just going to look at it and be like, I have no other choice. This is like paying this money. I have to do this.
yeah,
So, I mean, I think over time, I think it'll have to go that way regardless.
yeah. As
And
AI takes over, AI cannot do your plumbing and your electrical in your house.
yet,
Yes,
but
so
we're years away from that.
yeah,
Hopefully, Elon Musk can get involved in that too and try to fix
we
something.
shall see.
But we are, like I said, getting towards the end. I
Yeah,
want to give you kind of last words. Take it where
plug
you
in.
want
Can I
to.
plug in some stuff here?
Plug it right at the end of
Okay.
this. So this is kind of like your last word. This is where I look for something a little more motivational, whether it's reflective on yourself or something like a piece of advice you might give to
Mhm.
someone who wants to get into a similar career path or
Yeah.
a different career, just something that you could leave the people with.
Yeah, I think it's critical to be self-aware. Know who you are. Know your type of energy. Like if you're someone that is like you wake up like with before the alarm and you're like go 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 and you're like a machine. Find something that you can attach that energy to, that has financial upside, that has passion, has a purpose in life, and you're gonna be very happy. If you're someone that you just kind of want to go through life. You want to have some downtime? You want to have some uptime, and you want to work with have a wife or significant other or girlfriend, and you want to focus more time on kind of this balance. Know that, align your career, align um your kind of your future steps in life around who you are authentically, and you're gonna be happier. If you misalign yourself where you find a job where they really want that go 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 guy, but you're not that guy, then don't take that job. Don't do that. So it's that alignment is critical to being happier. Be willing to have seasons that are going to be painful and suck. Be willing to, with the intent of having a plan ahead, with knowing what is after that season. That season achieves something. Be willing to take that pain to get to that next step in life. So those are kind of my steps of really around self-awareness, being able to be okay being uncomfortable and painful, but ultimately have a plan, have a goal going forward at the end of the day.
Yeah,
So
I think that's really great. I really resonate with that as well. It's just know yourself.
yeah,
Like you have to check in with yourself. You have to figure out what aligns with you and be open to, like those said, those uncomfortable phases of life. They're important for growth. So it's been a great conversation. I want to let you plug in a
yeah.
lot of your stuff right now.
So my company again is Breiter Planet Properties. Breiter Planet.com would be our website. You can find us on all channels. I create some content, but not as well as the Carroll Connection overall. But
Appreciate
I,
that.
I create some content, and overall, happy to connect. I also, you Google me, Andrew Breiter, same spelling, hyphen WU. Google me and find any of my pages, follow me, would love a follow and connect, and we'll take it from there.
Perfect. I appreciate you, and I'll tag you in all the stuff like I did the first time around, and we'll do that again. And
I will
hopefully,
share. Make sure for the Carroll Connection, there is a bell on you. If you're watching on YouTube, there are notifications on Spotify and Apple that you can actually get a drop down or notification on your phone when they post. So hit that notification bell, please.
I would appreciate that. You guys know I would, and I'm about to plug that as well. You guys know my spiel, but Andrew, I look forward to more conversations in the future, and I appreciate sitting down with you and reconnecting. So appreciate you.
Appreciate it, man.
For you guys, if you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your grandma. Check it out at thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also, we have Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you'd like to watch your podcast, go on YouTube, search The Carroll Connection or at Jared M. Carroll. It should pop up right for you. And like I said, if you want to be a guest or return as a guest like Andrew, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at The Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. So, until next time, guys, peace.
We are out.